jump
Yeah, no problem.
in. Usually in this webinar format, usually there is some kind of space like a so-called green room in between, but now we are like jumping in front.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my name is Dubravka Sekulic. I'm a program lead for MA City Design, and it's my incredible pleasure to be able to have this conversation today with Khaldun Bshara. Um, this is part of the series called City Design and Conversation, Volume 2, Minor Planning. And I'll just quickly say, and this is part of the kind of the work we are doing in the program. So quickly, City Design is a one-year MA program at the Royal College of Art School of Architecture, which tries to kind of propose different ways of practicing urban design and urbanism, and understanding that this is precisely where most of the politics lies, what we can do, and how we can live our everyday lives individually, but especially collectively, are so framed with what we can do spatially and in space. And we are now we are living in the like couple of decades of spreading across the world real estate driven urban planning, which has been rendering into monoculture spaces across the world. So in this context, we are trying to understand the rules and how these rules of master planning work in order to be able to subvert them and ultimately go and work beyond them. In this context, I'm personally interested in thinking through what I call minor planning, which is not necessarily in opposition with master planning, but more of a dialectical relation. And understanding that if the space enables or mostly disables how we can live our lives, then we need to develop emancipatory ways of planning that support and which I call minor planning. In this context, scaling up is not, it kind of, or which is seen as a road to stability, is not scaling up, but it's actually federative approaches which link up various different tendencies and understand that design is working with the existing dispositions, and these dispositions can be either spatial or societal or both. And in this context, in this series, I have invited a number of people whose work is what I think minor planning, and has been an inspiration for an open all the works that have been creating this opening of how we can practice city design differently. So we started 2 weeks ago with a conversation with Iva Čukić with Ministry of Space, Urban Collective from Belgrade. Then we last week spoke with Olympia Kazi, urban activist from New York, who has been working on changing policy and frameworks for nightlife and racial laws that prevent that you need a dancing permit in order to dance, and also changing differently affordability. So it's kind of one really important aspect of for minor planning and for city design is understanding policy as a site of design, as a site of struggle and intervention. And I'm beyond thrilled that the third in the conversation is with Khaldun, whose work which challenges not only what urban design is, but also challenges what preservation is, and really responds to what does it mean to kind of design to city spaces for liberation in the most concrete possible way, because all of your work is in Palestine. So it's impossible to start this conversation anywhere else but with the current situation in Gaza and the rest of Palestine. And you have just recently published this absolutely amazing essay, Space, Time, and Re-Making of Gaza, in the series Palestinian Repairs, edited by our dear friend, who is also part of School of Architecture at Royal College of Art, Emilio Distretti, which outlines what repair is in the context of Gaza and other colonized regions, and how emerges as an act of defiance, a tactics of resistance, which also challenge, and I quote you, prevailing forms of disposability, where object structures and even entire cities are demolished to make way for new. So I would like to come back to this, but to keep this thought, because for me, this sentence also captures not just the conditions of approaches to space transformation in Palestine and Gaza, but I see resonance of this across the world. I see this especially, for example, in Serbia, from Belgrade, where I'm from. It would be maybe really good to start at the beginning, in a way, because or how these approaches to repair have been developed over the course of your work, and response to necessity and urgency resisting occupation became a different approach to both preservation and urbanism, which also are this urbanism from below or minor planning. And for me, this is partly insisting on thinking about from the beginning is one of really important aspects to understand things doesn't come out of nowhere. There is always a historical and one thing that real estate driven developer and planning really erases this historical understanding of spaces. So welcome, Khaldun.
Yes, thank you, Dubravka, for inviting me. It's not the first time that we meet, but we start always talking about Gaza. And believe me that Gaza is still under fire. So there is no ceasefire really, and people get killed. So far, more than 300 people being killed since the truce. West Bank situation is worsening, settlements, settlers everywhere. And we cannot sometimes enter our university. The campus was occupied 3-4 days ago for 3-4 hours, but you can imagine a campus for academic liberty and knowledge production was occupied by the Israeli forces. Anyway, the beginnings. Okay, I'm architect, restorer, and anthropologist, and I was working with Rewak for 3 decades, since 1994 until 2024. So it's long history. My history is the history of Rewak. The history of Rewak has me in its history. So when I started in Rewak, there was a need or a dear need to know what do we have in Palestine to restore and why we need to restore things in Palestine. So actually, I entered Rewak for a big project called Historic Register of the Registry of Historic Buildings in Palestine. So we tried to understand what is this historic buildings that we want to protect and then to restore. So between 1994 until 2006, we have made a huge survey in Palestine, entering every village and town, and we managed to put together a registry. Yeah, we don't call it national registry, we call it Rewak registry, because Rewak is an NGO, non-governmental organization, which established under occupation for the aim to do cultural things. So we did not unveil everything that we want to do, but really our identity was at stake. We established Rewak to be able to understand what does it mean to have history and then to have identity. Therefore, we managed to compile a large registry, Rewak registry, of 50,320 buildings in 422 villages and towns. And this becomes our Bible, because this is biblical history, our Bible for restoration in the future. So from that registry, actually, which should be done by governments, but in our case, we did it from NGO because our government is absent or our government is incapable of doing it. So you can imagine that the identity project and the history project and the memory projects are projects of governments rather than bottom-up projects. And therefore, this is a big difference between Rewak and other registries, or between Palestine and other registries in the world, say France, for instance, or Turkey for that matter. So that Bible becomes our roadmap for restoration, or for our writings, or for our knowledge production, and so on. So from that registry, we knew that we have more than half of the buildings in need of restoration. So they are in bad conditions. And this bad condition resulted from lack of knowledge, resulted from lack of interest, resulted from lack of money and funding, resulted from Europe-centric approach to restoration and historic buildings. And so Palestinians consider these buildings as primitive and old and not worthy of protection. So this is why our heritage was not taken care of. And therefore, REWAC work started with the knowledge production to be able to produce other kind of knowledge production that brings people to accept, to restore, or to take our agenda on their backs. And so we start to make small projects actually to showcase that restoration is possible and it's not expensive, and every building can be converted to a safe haven for community and can be also a house, can be a library, can be a community center, and so on. So this was really a big move from history as luxury, history writing as luxury, and heritage as luxury in terms of conservation, to something which has to do with people practices and people life. This is a big difference, actually. It's like in this time in history, we try to inject new meanings in history and new meanings in heritage that has to do with the people's life, not an ideological project or identity project that comes from the government saying what to protect, what not to protect, and why to protect, and what to show and what not to show. This is just a start. This, if I
yeah, but I think that's kind of a super important start, because in a way, when you think what we have kind of top-down preservation preserves with walls at the expense of people and like, and and that there are so many things that you have mapped here which are also really relevant. The top-down, then this kind of idea of that there is one approach which is specialized approach, which is UNESCO approach,
yeah.
which really sees one of my favorite example that I kind of think about and discuss this with students and with others is the problem of UNESCO approach. When you look, for example, to Split. Split is a city in kind of coast of Croatia, whose kind of famously the house of one Roman emperor Diocletian becomes inhabited by thousands of people and survive and kind of is a lived, vibrant space for life for thousands of years. But then now, in the kind of nexus between UNESCO protection of the palace and to monoculture of tourism, which is the only kind of thing that kind of Croatia sees as a destiny for all its coastal towns, which of course always reduces local population into service. Like
Exactly.
the precisely what made that space live, adaptation, continuous kind of collaboration between what space can give and what life needs, and gets erased because it's about kind of freezing in some ur form and cleaning constantly. And then in that context, in the text for about Gaza, you also challenge this concept of repair, understanding of repair as bringing it back to the zero state versus repair as mending, which is also closer to how we understand in kind
Yeah.
of. But
Okay.
but this, can you? I think this is really important. The need to change the perspective, like which I think is both how to kind of show to the people what is that there is knowledge, that there is, for lack of better equality, but this also asks for reframing of what we understand as professional knowledge.
Yeah, that's true. Because of the professional knowledge or expert knowledge
Yeah,
in the UNESCO wording,
yeah,
I wrote some time ago about this colonial legacy and post-colonial discourse, and showing that even in Palestine, in which we try to live this post-colonial era, which we are not able so far, but once we try to do our work, we trapped with the terms and the logics and the frames that they are mostly Eurocentric. UNESCO is one of them, is a Western thing, is a Western creation. The World Heritage List is there also, and so on. So just imagine we need to acknowledge that Bethlehem is an important site for the world, so it is to be important site for Palestinians. So this is the opposite of really heritage, the historic buildings. Historic buildings are not static in the past. They evolved. They were functional for some purposes, for community purposes. They change rules and functions permanently. And suddenly we have to freeze that moment and say, now it is a World Heritage Site. And we need to deal with it in one, two, three parameters, like the UNESCO law, almost like a law. So for me, it's like in Palestine, we made all the mistakes for World Heritage Sites. We wanted everything to be put on World Heritage list, which is fine actually, because some of it is political, which means if we put sites on World Heritage list, might get protected. But this was not true in Bethlehem or was not true in Batir, and it's not true currently in Hebron, where Israelis are permanently destroying or harassing or occupying. So it's not really, if some site becomes a World Heritage List, it is not a guarantee for protection. This is from our practice. So I think we missed our way. It's like these buildings should have been part of our daily life, therefore they are protected. I don't care if tourism are coming or not, and if they are coming, actually are causing us harm more than money. Actually, the money is with the occupier, because tourism, every $100 spent is $90 goes to the Israeli occupation and $10 for the Palestinians in Bethlehem or elsewhere. So I think I am so critical to this expert knowledge because it does not take into consideration the people's practices, which gives meaning to these buildings and the spaces. So from get-go, I think we should have paid attention. What does it mean Batir for themselves, for the people themselves? What Hebron means for them? What these souks and mosques and shrines and what even these agricultural terraces in Batir means for the people of Batir. Then if tourism happened in one day, it's fine. But the beginning should be from the people themselves. To Gaza question, I think Gaza is a symptom, well, not a symptom, it's a failure of humanity project, really. It's a failure. And we should understand it as such. Otherwise, we will not learn from this failure of humanity, because not failure of Gazans or not failures of Palestinians. And it is a success for the colonial project, I would say. So if we just turn these into a roadmap, it's like how we let, this is the thing, how we let this happen in Gaza, how we people of the world, how we the humanity let the cities destroyed, the monuments destroyed, the people killed, the agriculture uprooted, and so on. I think this tells Gaza tells something not about Gazans, tells something about us. And therefore, even with the reconstruction, if we start with this failing project, the humanity failing project, we should change our ways of doing reconstructions. And Palestinians and the Middle Easterns, let's say the West Asians, yeah, we are really suspect. We are not comfortable with the idea of reconstruction and construction in post-war, because all the experiences happened in the region. They tend to be gentrification. They tend to be for capital. They don't tend to be for gaining and making more money for the rich. And the people, the indigenous people of Beirut, did not benefit from the project called the Central Beirut or Solidaire project. The people on Mosul or Baghdad, they are not benefiting from the projects of reconstruction. I'm afraid that Gaza also was portrayed as the New Singapore and the project by Trump, who wanted to convert it to casinos and hotels and service again. So he did not take into consideration the people of Gaza. The thing that if we want to judge projects, if these projects tend to be capitalist ones that benefit the minority and tend out to be benefiting only tourism, then there is some red flag. And if the project, reconstruction project, I'm not saying I'm against reconstruction because I'm in favor of reconstruction. But if these projects are for the people, to make infrastructure for the people, to housing for the people, markets for the people, and if they are made with consultation of the people, with the consultation, like where, how to build, how to form, how to make these spaces, then this is a green flag. Because what we have learned from other projects is uh, it looks like it will be repeated, a mistake that can be repeated in Gaza, and then Gaza will not be Gaza.
Yeah.
Uh,
And some of these traces actually really resonate. For example, the kind of reconstruction of cities in post-socialist context and this is the context from which I speak, which is a kind of post-Yugoslav.
Even
But there were,
Berlin,
yeah,
even Berlin is
in
like,
Berlin, and a lot of this, and also, which is also this operation in which we say how you knew, what you knew how to do doesn't work. There is only one way of properly, if kind of no, this is this expert knowledge, because there is, if you just briefly kind of go back to the coast of Croatia and the question of tourism, during socialist Yugoslavia, there a lot of infrastructure for tourism was developed, but it was kind of tourism was used as a way to build infrastructure for everyday life of those who lived there. And then each city or each place of inhabitation had multiple different programs that were so their reproduction of everyday life of people was connected to jobs which were not connected to servicing tourist facilities, nor this was, and because the space was understood as social property of a society, there was this idea of against enclosure. So it was not about building for enclosure and profit, but building for support of everyday life, which is really at the cusp of all the kind of. It's not a question of reconstruction, yes or no. The question is how and with whom, and as a support of which forms of life, ways of living life.
that's for sure. I think what is the spirit of Gaza that we need to reconstruct? What is this Gaza that we need to reconstruct? Who is going to answer this question? Uh, entails who's going to do the reconstruction and the shape of that reconstruction. So I think Palestinians has been excluded from this question. Like this, like the multi-billionaires and so on, this minority, they want to come and invest in Gaza as if it is a carte blanche. And this is what I mean when we need to restore time to Gaza. Gaza space as a space, it is only a geography of 350, 60 kilometers, but it has a long history and lots long history of construction, reconstruction, destruction. People relate to spaces, to trees, to shrines, to the sea, and so on. So suddenly we put them aside and start an area that is like the thing that we draw in the studio, a carte blanche, and you are a free thinker and try to do the most fascinating project. This is what I think we are failing into this evolutionary time, starting from ground zero. I mean, ground
Yeah.
zero. So Gaza is a ground zero, and now we can bring these celebrities and architects and the planners and tell them, okay, here you
Yeah.
are. You have the best opportunity in your life. Nothing there. This is what they say in the media.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think what we are doing in city design, and also we are really not starting that zero. It's not the kind of approaches are not
Uh-huh.
about kind of.
I understand you, but this is
Yeah. No,
Trump's.
no, 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 no. I understand. I'm trying
Ah,
to kind of weave us because I think that's I would like because I think there is already in what after 2006 you started to do. I think that there is already a knowledge of how to do it differently. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so maybe it would be great to hear a little
Yes.
bit
Let
about
me let
this.
me tell you about it because I like
Yeah.
to talk about walk into phases of
Yeah.
maturity. It's like because
Yeah.
we were learning and we were unlearning. what to do, what not to do. This is an important thing. We learned from our failures more than our successes. Although Riwaq has won all the prestigious awards in restoration and architecture and environment, blah, 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 including myself. I just won the ICROM International Award 3, 4 days ago. So
Congratulations.
yeah. It doesn't mean anything, but anyway, it means something.
Yeah.
So what we walk is, as I said, we tried to make a registry of what we have so as to be able to know what to do. What is this thing that we call heritage? So once we're done and we realized that there is a lot of heritage which needs restoration, we started to fundraise for restoration. And we found a closed door always. Nobody would fund us for restoration. Why? Because we are under occupation or in post-colonial era that we need other things rather than restoration. Restoration is luxury. So you do first infrastructure, you do education, you do health, and when you are really in a good position, you start to do restoration. So in 2000, when amid the second intifada, when we have a 70% employment rate in some places or more. So instead of asking funders for money for restoration, we start to ask money for job creation. So we switched the whole logic, the whole paradigm. The first time in history that I think heritage was used to bring food to the table. So instead, and suddenly we have lots of funders, the Arabs, the Swedish, the Norwegian, many people put money, the Spanish, they put money in restoring buildings, but indirectly, giving us money to create jobs for the unemployed Palestinians. And we did not use this money for sweeping the streets or making stupid stuff. We start to do restoration. So while doing the restoration, we managed to create jobs. While doing jobs, we managed to do the restoration. And not only this, we managed to recreate the know-how. This is the most important of the job creation project that started in 2000 until 2013. We managed to restore more than 100 community centers in different villages and towns. And in these sites, we consider them as schools of restoration, is how to do it, because we don't know how to do restoration, how to do plaster, how to do pointing, how to do doors, how to do windows. We start to do these as sites of experimentation and sites of knowledge production. And after 3, 4 years, we start to have a huge amount of people who are capable to do restoration. This was one thing that tells you a story of how even funding from Western world or from the Arab-rich countries can yield knowledge production that is sustainable. People who learned how to restore buildings, they start to restore their buildings. People who start to restore buildings manage to sell their labors for others, the rich people, and restore buildings and so on. So I told you in the beginning how we evolved and how we learned. We start this project, and every year we manage to do like 10 centers, 8 community centers, libraries, booths, and so on. But we know that 25,000 buildings need restoration. Therefore, we said it's not enough. We need like 2,500 years to finish, and it's impossible. So we start to be more aggressive. In 2006-7, we started a larger project, which is called the 50 Village Project. From the registry itself, we realized if we concentrate our work on 50 villages and restore these villages, we will be able to restore half of our heritage. This is like a rational take when we don't have a central government, a rational take when we don't have enough resources, human and money, and a rational take when we don't have time. So this NGO managed to do a large national project because of the need and because of the failure of the job creation, which was successful, very successful actually. So between 2006-7 until now, we managed to restore more than half of these villages, which means we enter a village, we do housing, we do infrastructure, we do streets, we do facades, we do community centers, we do a lot of projects in one village rather doing one thing. And in 2000, almost 17, we started different approach even. Instead of targeting one village at a time, we said, why we don't target cluster of villages at one time? Instead of working on one village, let's group things. And why is that? Because in this kind of approach, we start to look into the in between these villages, which was the marginal place. It was not paid attention to. So the in between becomes the center rather than the periphery or the marginal or something which is not important. For instance, the agriculture. We try to see the channels of production where people produce, where people sell, where they do their pottery ware, and where they sell this pottery, where they do their wheat or figs, and where do they sell them. And suddenly we start to see different kind of Palestine. 50 villages managed to show an alternative geography of Palestine beyond the fragmentation. But in this kind of geography, the second project, which we started a pilot of which was the life jacket of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is detached from its villages and rural sites, and start to look into Hizma, Kalandia, Kufr Aqab, and Jabba, and all these villages which surround Jerusalem, but they are detached from Jerusalem. And in that project, we start to see relations rather than cuttings, relations between this village and Jerusalem, between villages themselves, who was teaching who was studying at whom, and so on. So this is the second or the third job creation, 50 villages, a cluster. Now, while we were doing a clustering and while we're doing villages, we also paid attention why we are coming to this village. Of course, we come with the village council, we come with the people and so on, but why we don't rely on them to restore their houses? This was a big question, how we let them participate fully in the process. And we go back to history. It's not in terms of the colonial time, the static past, but to learn from history. And we have the history in front of us. We have something called Oni in Palestine, which is the interdependency. People gather their resources to do something that individually cannot. Harvesting the olives, harvesting the wheat, building houses, taking care of kids, guarding the village, all these things cannot be do individually. So we said, okay, we don't give you the money to restore, or we don't restore your building. We do something and you do something. Like we offer you material and you do the rest. And instead of restoring one building, yeah, with $10,000, we start to restore 3 buildings in the same money. Why? Because people are underemployed, they are unemployed. People, they have relations, they have social relations. So if you give them the money for, give them the material for a blaster, they will mobilize their relations to blaster. Their cousin, their uncle, their neighbor, they will gather. And they were, from our experience, exchanging labor without money, which means I will do your doors, you will do my plaster. I do your electricity, you do my plumbing. And suddenly people coming together because just we looked back to our practices in space, involved it concretely in the space. And so this helped us even do more projects and do more housing projects, which is usually not funded by funders. Funders are interested in public space, public buildings, although really they are not. In a way, if they are, they will be interested in democracy, they will be interested in human rights, they will be interested in Gaza, they will be interested in cost, pollution, and so on. But I think, anyway, we managed to do with their money what we wanted to do. And this is like one thing I want to add is like, while we were doing this apolitical stuff, actually we were doing the most political stuff. It's like to think about an alternative existence for this community. What kind of modes of existence for this community? Are they going to be individualistic, neoliberal people do not care about each other, do not care about even their fathers and mothers or their neighbors, or they care. They exchange, they look, they don't leave anybody behind, and so on. So I think this REWAC managed to do many things that a government can do actually easily. They can do because they have the power and they have the funding. And believe me, they are spending the money somewhere else, like in World Heritage lists or management of sites that we cannot even visit because of the checkpoints and so on. So really, the shifting paradigms has been almost all our ways in our way in REWAC. I just give you a small examples that pertaining to art, because REWAC is the home of REWAC Biennale. And REWAC also is the home of Colombia International Biennale. So in 2005, we came together in REWAC and we said we'll make a big bang in Palestine. We'll make a Biennale in Palestine. And this Biennale is named not after Ramallah, it names after an institution, which is REWAC. And the main thing about it is like how to use art for already formatted agenda. So art usually has no agenda other than that pleasure and that art. In our case, the art acquired a function for REWAC to attract attention to what REWAC is doing in Palestine, especially in rural areas.
I think I was still a student in 2005 when I heard about REWAC through REWAC biennial. Actually, in the context of, I think it was an event in Ljubljana at the Moderna Galleria Museum, kind of project called New Public Spaces, organized by Bojana Piškur, a curator. And I think this is really important because I think it shows what can be done when we refuse this idea that expert knowledge about architecture and urbanism sits outside of people who actually live lives. And that there is no that the fear of protecting that kind of expert knowledge in order to protect some privileged position of professional in a society, which I think have been big struggle in Western world, but also in all the ways in which that model has been exported across the globe in the past few centuries. This fight is also failing to protect that. We know that because of the kind of failing wages and the status of spatial practitioners in a society. So I think what I kind of hear is really what you're doing is you're constantly rewiring the system. In order, and you said learning and relearning, in order to also not be afraid to produce different political subjects, both as both kind of those who are kind of practitioners who initiate these processes but let them go. But also I can imagine that in this context, in all of these villages, through this process of coming together to, in the most practical way, but not that kind of participation of like regimented, small fragmented labor that takes away the agency, but it's actually a lot about propping this. And what I also think, what is kind of really important, the challenge to the idea that there is urban and rural, that there is this zone, like the kind of the zoning that we need to precisely know what is happening.
Yeah. Let me say something about the expert knowledge. Expert knowledge, for me, it's fine. I don't mind to have expert knowledge. But are these experts allow themselves to be changed in the process or not? It's like allow themselves to be subjects to this change or not. It's like I come from France and do things exactly the way that they have to be done. You have different contexts and different mood of production, different relations of production, and so on. I cannot imagine with all these different relations of production, still we are doing one way of production. It cannot, in terms of heritage and reconstruction, I mean. So I think if the expert is allowing himself to venture in that experience, I think he will get something. The process, the whole of it will be productive because he's changing as he is changing things. It's not only he is fixed and changing people. And this reminds me actually with the colonial project, the civilizing mission, as if this expert is saying, I know what is good for you. And this proved to be wrong. Proved to be very evolutionary, very linear, and it failed most of the time. And we saw the civilizing mission is not a civilizing mission. End up with colonization of the world, exploitation of the world, labor for the world, two world wars, genocides every now and then, including Gaza and so on. So I think we should be cautious about expert knowledge, to even using it on the terms of Gazans, for instance. Yes, if you let yourself to lend yourself to Gazan is fine, but to tell Gazans how they can cope with the life and so on, I think it's messy and will be reproducing the same colonial logic in a sense. So
And
yeah, go.
yeah, and the kind of this colonial logic is so embedded within common sense of urban design and urban planning and architecture to certain degree. So what would you for like if you were to kind of kind of it's not about creating universal knowledge, but I think that there is a lot of no kind of experiences and practices and knowledges around Riwak that actually can become a basis of practicing in other places as well.
Rewak is currently, I knew from my colleagues because I am no
Mhm.
longer Rewaki in job. I am
Yeah.
Birzeit now, teaching in Birzeit University. But I so often go and drink coffee just to know what those crazy people are doing. And I learned that they are doing work in Gaza, and I know that they are doing work in Gaza. But the beautiful thing is, like I learned that the Gazans were not waiting, nor for Iraq, nor for anybody, and they were doing the work. So I make this. Actually, I don't want to show slides because I don't have this faith with pictures. No more, actually. If the words cannot make a change, then the picture will not do. It's anyway. But we know that the Gazans were taking artifacts and burying them again during the war. So these are our experts in Gaza. They were taking the artifacts and burying them again. So as in the future, they will unbury them and present them. So I think the Riwaq, what they told me, that they are really trying to understand what Gazans need and what they want, and let the Gazans lead the process. So who are the architects? Are the Gazans. Who are the supervisors? Are the Gazans. Who are making the service and the gathering of information? They are the Gazans. And I think this is a big thing. Whatever Riwaq acceptance in Gaza, because we have a good history with Gaza, yeah, I think we don't understand. If you visit once or twice or three times or 10 times, it's not enough. This kind of ethnography from far away does not work. Yeah. And from my writings, also from my experience in Gaza, we found that whatever we do designs outside Gaza will not be sufficient or will not be suitable for the Gazans. And we did it. We did it many times. We did the best design ever, and we sent it to Gaza, but it didn't work. Why? Because they have different contexts. They don't have material, this kind of stone, and so on. And they have to redo the design to suit the context. So why to lose this time? Why they don't do it? And that's it. They know. They know what material they have. They know what expertise they have. They know the social context that they can navigate easily. And we should not really be competitive with them. We are not competing. Those people are surviving a genocide. If we want to compete, let's have a genocide in Palestine, all of it.
Yeah.
We don't need, yeah, no, we don't compete with the people who survived the genocide, please. So they can do things, and we are really witnessing huge things in Gaza happening right now, how they repair houses, how they repair hospitals, how they invent water, how they create electricity, and so on. I think that the the need and the scarcity oblige them to think differently. And this is true actually all over the history. Tough times create inventions. Scarcity created inventions. And we can see that Gazans are trying to cope with the results of the genocide in very creative way. Actually, because I'm teaching in Birzeit University,
Yeah.
always I urge my students to learn from Gazans, to learn from them, because this is strange, because we think that we did the best housing, but Gaza proved not. We did not do the best housing in Ramallah. Gaza proved that we are not prepared for any genocide. Gaza proved that we are not really a community who cares about each other. So we have to learn from Gaza what they are doing and how they are coping so as to create a new existence in the West Bank, to be able to be prepared for these atrocities that they are unfolding in front of our eyes. If we are one community, we will not be able to be defeated, actually. Anyway, so I think the projects that uh, Riwak is doing in Gaza, and I learned also they are collaborating with anybody from Gaza and in the West Bank who are willing to do things. So instead of duplicating projects and duplicating resources and duplicating efforts and so on, so they gather on Zoom and media, and they divide what this person is doing and what this community is doing and so on. I think this brings us back to the concept of Oni. Different institutions gather to do things that nobody can do. Different communities gather to do things that one community cannot do. And different individuals gather to do things that individually they cannot do. This is what we are really catching from Gaza nowadays, which is, I'm not going to romanticize. The situation is really bad. Situation is beyond bad. Like they feel cold and they feel hungry and they feel no education, they feel no future, and so on. Just imagine what kind of expert knowledge will lead to something else. How do we, as experts trained usually in Europe and on the same terms, let's say, how we can do this, the harm, undo the harm, how we can reinstate meanings to their life, how we can be ecological, how we can be collective, how we can create the common rather than the individual and the capitalist and the small community who is making money and the others are suffering, and so on. So I think our expertise need to change themselves actually. It's like how to lend yourself to that process. And while you are lending yourself to that process, you change. And I think we gain a lot if we learn. This is not we are losing our expertise. You will be a different kind of expertise.
Yeah, and in some ways that I kind of understand what is also it's about at first also a really different temporal engagement, which is not this kind of beginning of the process and project and the end, and then you forget and you move on, which has also been speeded up so much in the last couple of decades with digital tools, together with the real estate spatial fix of the kind of for the capital in global capital. So I think that there is one. I think that there is also a lot of understanding that in kind of designer in this space, you then become someone who, because of thinking through space, but also through is able to connect the dots and ensure to scaffold some in some way processes and who needs to come and talk to who and the sensitivity who needs to be brought if they are not part of the process, scaffold so that the design shifts into designing the process of design and not determining how things look. And for me that seems as a really important shift, especially if we are shifting, which Riwak understood, when that you cannot do things building by building. It's really about building separates relations, that it's really about, city designer, like design of this relational between
Yeah.
where buildings then become relational things that around which life happens, and then they support.
Well said. Yeah, I think this is the key issue. Is like expert knowledge is important, but they can facilitate the process which is social, then things will be different. Yeah. And instead of being an outsider who is trying to impose an agenda or impose a shape or impose a plaza, then your expertise is how to do the plaza that the people called for, how to do a housing that the people in need. They don't know how to fix the lime and the mortar and the windows, but you know better how to make it economical, how to make it better, how to make it more isolated, how to make it good for rain, how to make it more green, and so on. I think in that sense, people in Gaza will teach us some classes in environment, architecture, and so on, but they cannot do a lot. They cannot do everything. And they need people who already studied these issues of insulation, the soundscapes, greenery, what kind of trees together, what kind of soil, what kind of pollution, how we to treat it, and so on. I think as I started, I don't. I want to be also cautious. I said I'm not against expert knowledge, but when expert knowledge becomes something from outside telling me what is good for me, there is something wrong. It's
Yeah.
like if somebody comes and tell me, like, let's do a Trump Tower and this will employ 200 Palestinians and will benefit 200 other families, I will say, go do it somewhere else.
Yeah, well, they've been trying to build a Trump Tower in Belgrade on the remnants of the bombed in '99 kind of heritage building. So there is, I think that there are ways in which they are trying to connect this around across the world. But I think in this context, what is, and I'm kind of cautious of time. We don't the climate collapse hits built environment the most. And, like in London, for instance, is really suffering already. We There are, and especially what suffers also are, and there here those who are racialized and minoritized will suffer more. So those who already live in the poor, but there is also the problem of newly built houses, which are actually one of the hottest uh, here. So it seems to me that a lot of these approaches that we are talking about are what will be needed in the future, because we will need to rewire, we will need to rethink which plants can actually survive climate collapse in
Yeah.
order to also support the equitable distribution of these strategies of reconstituting our built environment in order to support life under these incredible conditions. And this is something that is always at the back of my head when we think about what is city design for the future. Not so much master planning from scratch, but really this again kind of humble comparing to this whole idea of which we all have been educated on, of radical authorial gestures that are either in one building or an urban plan. I would like to invite people from the audience if they have any questions to put into Q&A, because we have uh, 10, 15 more minutes. But while people are thinking maybe of their questions, I have, at the end of this city design conversation, I always like to turn to music. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, because my understanding of minor planning has been shaped a lot by recognizing how, for me, in the cities I feel I belong to, Niš, the city I was born, Belgrade, or now London, the path to belonging was through being with others and listening in the events we call concerts or parties, and despite big deep commitment to our kind of listening as an urban knowledge.
Uh-huh.
So what is music song for you? Where is
Uh,
music for you as what
I'm
opens up, like, city life?
yeah. It's like I think this is uh, okay. I will share one. Okay, but
Yeah,
really, when you asked me, I said what hits me most. Usually, I am into classics. Kulthum, Abdul Wahhab, and all these Egyptian
yeah,
stars.
yeah.
Time like lived before me tens of years. Actually, they died before I was born. Really. because I like the lyrics. The lyrics, these are really poetic. They are really see the dystopian future, the vanishing love, the vanishing landscape, and so on. And this is my music usually. But when you ask me what I would listen that characterize this coming together. Yeah, I thought of Fairuz. Just imagine. Fairuz,
Mhm.
she's half Palestinian, half Lebanese, but she knows like she is like a pyramid in Arabic music, and she sang for Jerusalem, and she was so nice to hear her talking about Jerusalem. But I thought this is not about Jerusalem. It's not about Palestine. It's not even about Gaza. About coming together in a soundscape. So I would rather choose Soul 47. This is a new band in Palestine. If you
I've heard them in London in this
see,
summer.
and I love most the song, which is I don't care where you're from. Don't care where you're from. Where you're from, where you're from. صح? And this song was actually it was written by four people, not one, composed by using local music, soundscapes, and international ones, appealing for older people and new generations. And it has the language, the Arabic one and the English one in one. So I think I would really show you this one. Not show, but just to listen for 1 second about it.
Yeah,
Okay,
great.
okay, let me share it. Okay, is it shared now?
Yes.
Yes. And okay, should start in no time. Should I have normal internet, but it works usually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can also,
If you find it, also you
I
can.
found it and I already
Oh,
can,
okay. Oops.
but I think it was just, did you share the audio?
Yeah, yeah. It works.
No, no, you have to click share audio so that we can hear it as well.
Ah, so that's the-
Well, I have,
ah,
I can also share. And if there are,
yeah,
please, if you feel like asking a
yeah,
question,
yeah. Share
anyone,
it.
yeah,
You share it because it's good to listen.
yeah,
Sorry, it's complicated for me. Okay, you share it and then we can stop with the questions.
yeah.
But why I'm showing this? Because people believe that Palestinians are not into the future. They are static in the past, as if they are in the Nakba time 1948 or in the 19th century Ottoman era. I think Palestinians, they were very productive in art and in music and so on, and they are experimenting in hip hop and blah, blah, blah. So in jazz music and in oud, and they are the musicians of the region almost, really. We have more oud players than Egypt. This is what
Now,
the
and
claim.
I think what is also here, what is for me, why music is something that I kind of ask this question is that in order to be able to create music and kind of listen together, one needs to also organize city life differently. Like so much of the like so much of the cities across Western world especially are suffering from this hyper privatization that has happened. There are no more community centers where people can rehearse. There
Mhm.
is no time. Everybody has like the kind of the labor conditions and precariousness actually destroys the kind of time people have to sit and experiment in new forms. And then there is also this flattening of what music experience is by the big corporations. I mean, so for me, these questions of music really easily opens up understanding that cities can be something else. And when I say city, I also don't think this kind of separation of like city versus rural, and the way that we all have empathic charge to what the surroundings to which we live, which is as much as blunt urbanism tries to design out people's emotional connection, is really something that we need to learn how do we design with.
Yes, yes. I think, cities has some kind of sound you have to pay attention to, or villages, or scapes, or yeah. If you tell me what you remember from Gaza, I tell you I remember the sea.
Yeah,
Well, if you ask me what you remember from Jerusalem, I will say the prayers time or the market sounds at the Bab al Amud, Damascus Gate. If you ask me about Nablus, I will tell you, like in the large square, there is lots of beep, 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 sayarat, the cars, and so on. So I know what does it mean, really. Really, these sounds are important and they shape our future even. Like you always think about these things. Oh, actually, when I was teaching restoration and rework for interns and so on, I tell them what kind of music you will hear while you're designing this space. And this deserves some classic. This deserves something sound problematic, and it has to be percussion and so on and so on. So this, I can imagine. I have a good ear, but I don't play anything. I have no sound to other than chanting in the streets, which is
yeah,
fine. But I cannot sing. But anyway, you're right. I think what you are pointing at, which is the most important, is the absence of the space that bring us together. And this is really a colonial result, because the colonials divided the space into private and public. And the public is the state, and the rest is yours. So your house is yours, your market is yours, your shop is yours, but everything else is the state. This is why we are really in attention with the state always.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that to kind of end on what you were saying, like who builds the survey is not just, if we let it to the states that are all, or cities governments who are only into seeing that as a source of real estate development.
Yeah.
uh, that's a really different kind of registry than if we are doing it from below in order to understand what are the spaces we can fight for. And this is,
Yeah.
for example, what has happened in Belgrade by this initiative called Ministry of Space that Eva mentioned, is that they started mapping what are the spaces that are underused but in public, through the cycles of and also transformation of proper, and kind of building on that argumentation, we can imagine city differently than from what you're offering us,
Yeah.
because we understand that this space, what is in this context of time, what is public interest, how do we actually even come into common interest through that, is one of the key tasks, I think, for also designers to understand. It's not something that is just given to us through the
Yeah.
project briefs, but actually something we need to understand. Who do we work
Yeah.
with?
I think what you're saying is important, because in Palestine we are suffering from the urbanization of the rural. It's like this is a mistake, and we will realize this mistake after 50 years, that our productive means are now built up. Now we don't have rural area in that term of rural area. And it is a continuity of a rhythm or a trend that started in the colonial era. Resources and the products are produced in villages and then exploited to the urban centers. And until the moment all resources are exploited, or humans are exploited from villages to the urban center in Palestine. And I think we should be cautious about how we deal with the future concerning, especially the rural Palestine, which is, I think, the only hope for Palestine, because cities are just cities and we don't have production. So it's just like an agglomeration of people sitting together, but really we don't have factories, and we don't have Silicon Valley, and we don't have China, and we have only shops and cafes to sell stuff to people. So
Yeah,
even the concept of a city is not a place for production. This is a place of consumption. in
Yeah, and
our
I think
case.
this is also what has happened in all so many places, like London and everything, in which the kind of the relationship between hinterland and extraction and sucking up.
But
So
can
so
you
how do
believe?
we design
Yeah.
differently? And also, I always think, where does the city, if does the city end when the master plan ends, or it ends where the water is coming from?
Wow, wow, that's a good idea. But can you imagine in before October 7, 2023, Gaza has enough food to sustain itself and
Yeah,
including export fish, exporting fragolas, the strawberries,
yeah,
and exporting roses. It was enough. And when
yeah,
I was shocked actually to know that when I was in Gaza, I asked, where are these watermelon from? They said, what you are asking about? Potatoes. I said, stop asking. These are all from Gaza. So they were producing their enough food and they are
yeah.
exporting the rest to the world or to the West Bank. So I hope when we reconstruct Gaza, it will still be able to sustain its people. Otherwise, what is this kind of development?
And in that context, so many places have can learn
Yeah,
from
yeah, of course.
how do you actually, because we, with the current pressures of climate, food, and also
Yeah.
the kind of, yeah.
It's like
So
how we can be expert in mastering the production of agriculture so we can sustain ourselves. It's
yeah,
good.
and refuse the separation that agriculture is something that should be outside of where we live.
Yeah, yeah, that's
The
fine.
separation. So I
Yeah,
think in this context, I want to kind of wrap up because we already are over time. Is that this kind of I think what the way I think it's something that's so strong is that question of repair here for me is also repair of relations, and also this relation of knowledge and who holds knowledge and separation, and which is also really against actually separation
yeah,
and refusing this separation without sharing responsibility for the processes, because I think that it's really important for designers to understand that there is some people, some of the nodes in the processes have to take more responsibility than others, and that's where I think designers can also emancipate themselves. It's not about, it's about respect, accepting responsibility without aiming for authorial gesture that everybody recognizes.
true,
Yeah.
true. I think this kind of repair should be time specific, context specific, should be also about the relations you mentioned and against abstraction.
Yeah.
Yeah, really against abstraction. We need to help this process because we know how to do it sometimes. And we approved not only Rework, but other institutions in Gaza or in the West Bank. They managed to cope and to resist and to create defiance and to create resilience for communities using their resources and using their common sense, really, their common sense.
Thank you so much, Khaldun.
You're
This has
welcome.
been
You're welcome.
absolutely wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. We continue on 15th of January.
Yeah.
Also, 1 p.m. London time with Charlotte Malter Bart, with whom we will discuss how her proposal on moratorium on new construction works as a city design intervention. I wish everyone good holidays in this period in which there are many different holidays which are happening, and for a future where there is a proper liberation and freedom and not suspension of wars
And justice for
and
everyone.
justice. Justice
Justice.
for everyone. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christina. Bye.